Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Sunday Reflections. I'm really pleased to be here today. It's a very momentous day. It's the International Day of Yoga, and we've been doing yoga sessions. We completed 2 in the morning, and we have one coming up at 7 p.m. Yoga for Equality and Peace. So do check it out. It's also Father's Day. So wishing all the fathers, mine included, my brother, my brother-in-law, my uncles, a happy Father's Day. Thank you for all that you do. Today is the summer solstice. It's the longest day. We also had the solar eclipse. So I don't know if you had a chance to look at one of the planetarium's live feeds, but I tried to do that, and it was awesome. So thank you for joining me. And today I have a very special guest, Ansoo Gupta. She is the founder of One Shoe Trust. And of course, she does many other things, not just that. So welcome, Ansoo. How are you?
Thank you so much. I'm doing very well, and truly, I mean, it's really a remarkable day today. I mean, so many things happening all at once.
It's also World Music Day, by the way. So I think I don't know, it's like packed. There's lots of events, lots of. I follow this guy Carlton Briganza, and he has a show going on right now. I don't want to direct people to the show, but please check it out. Throughout the lockdown, he kind of helped all of us go through it. So the lockdown has been extremely painful for many. It was a forced lockdown, so a lot of people weren't anticipating it. I mean, you think it's for 3 weeks, you put in your best effort, it extends for 3 months, and then you're at your wit's end. So how have you been coping during the lockdown, Ansoo?
Not to obviously take away from the problems that some of the people were facing, etc. But I think for me personally, it was a welcome distraction, I would say, and more so because I do a lot of travel, and a lot of people keep asking me, but for you it must be specifically very difficult because you travel so much and all that. And frankly, I really didn't find it troublesome at all. I do a lot of traveling within, and I do a lot of traveling, like in very close neighborhood of where I am. So it didn't affect me like that. Also, I've been on this, kind of an inward journey for about a while now, and I thought it was a really good period of, if I can call it, like silence, a period of stability, or everything like kind of just slowing down, and I found it actually worked for me in some ways, all the problems notwithstanding.
So today is the International Day of Yoga. Do you do any kind of yoga or meditation, and does that in any way help you?
So I when I grew up in an Arya Samaji family, and there the stress on meditation, on dhyan, on physical exercises, on yoga is ingrained from children right from the very beginning. So I had it as a part of my growing up. And I've always been like, yoga has always been a part of my life. I remember when I started working in Star TV many years back, they used to do these evening yoga sessions in the office. And I was amongst the few that was always there for that training session. I really used to enjoy that. And maybe somewhere then along, like everything else, in work and in house and family, you kind of lose it a little bit. I haven't been meditating for very long, which I've just restarted around a year back, but I found it extremely, extremely worthwhile. I've really found a lot of peace and a lot of stability in myself with the meditation. And these days, anybody asks me for any problem at all, my answer to them is meditation.
So you and I have another love in common, travel. So how did you go about, what got you onto this travel bug? And can you share a little bit about why did you form this organization, One Shoe Trust? What does it do? And, what are you trying to achieve with it?
Yeah, so my travel story is not very different from everyone. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't love traveling. I mean, I think everybody wants to travel, but my Kira was a little different when I started. So the first thing that I did when I started working was first of all to get my passport made. I mean, I hadn't traveled abroad before I started working. We used to do some bit of domestic travel, but not, I hadn't traveled internationally. So the first thing that I did was to get my passport. And once I started earning a little money, I started saving. My whole thing was about how do I make the maximum of the limited money that I have in seeing as much of the world that I can. And as a result of that, I planned for quite a few years in the while that I was saving as well. And as a result of that, I wanted to do a round the world trip actually. And a round the world trip was not something that was very easy for an Indian at that point of time. I'm talking about 20 years back, because of visa restrictions, and nobody here knew how to do the ticketing for an RTW, etc., etc. So I did the next best thing. I did, instead of a 1 year RTW, I took up a 4 month backpacking trip in Europe. Now, of course, it has become like a rite of passage for everyone who wants to get into travel. But again, at that point of time, it was really, uh, unheard of. And I actually quit my job for that. I mean, because I realized that nobody's going to give me a 4 month leave. So, I will have to quit my job. And I did that, to actually, kind of go traveling. Luckily for me, I got hired by the same organization, and they were happy to let me have this 4 month gap. So I was working at National Geographic Channel that time, and if they can't give me a 4 month leave to travel, I don't know which other brand can. So that worked out nicely. And I think, again, in a truly cliched manner, that 4 month trip on trains, on buses, like, totally on shoestring, it really changed my life, and changed my thinking right from the very beginning of my career. Because this, and there was this other book that I read by Charles Handy, which was Elephant and the Flea, which was all about how in next few years it's all about gig economy, and the jobs as we see are not going to be as fulfilling anymore. So combine the two things, I really thought that the only fulfilling thing that I will do in my life is actually to see the world, to see how different people live, and to see different kind of civilizations. Some are more developed than us, some are less developed than us, and everybody is living in a different way. And I thought that was really the calling of my life, to kind of see different cultures, and different places. And I love nature. The first opportunity I got was with a conference that Star TV was organizing, when I was working with Star TV. And they were taking us to Australia. And I begged my boss to give me extra leave after the conference, because I realized that in geography books I've read about these Great Barrier Reef that Australia has. And I thought, how can I come back from Australia without seeing the Great Barrier Reef? So we finished the conference, and the first thing I did was to head off to the Great Barrier Reef. Again, only people who were going to Australia in those days were like honeymooners, and every tour travel agent that I asked, they would give me this 9 day, 10 night package, and very fancy, very expensive. And then I realized, I can't take a package. I have to do it on my own. So put together a cheap flight and did as much research as I could on internet. There wasn't that much on the internet those days. There was this one very nice community called on the Lonely Planet. It was called the Thorn Tree. It was really a nice community. I really miss it. And from there, I got some pieces of information, booked my first youth hostel, and suddenly realized that it was actually possible to have a great vacation in very less money. And that's it. I mean, after that, after that, there was no stopping. There was 4 month backpacking trip in Europe, and I just kept going. So one shoe was a result of my experiences that I just wanted to share with people. More than my travel stories, it was about telling people that it is possible for anybody to travel as much as they want, how to plan their leaves, how to plan their budgets, how to ask for leave, how to get parents' permission. Because a lot of girls who come to my workshops have this question of, how do we convince our parents to let us go and travel solo, etc. So I started this series of talks all over the country, and I really, I did Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Raipur, Calcutta, Hyderabad, everywhere, and I was just telling people how to kind of do this better. But and then of course information was a lot more accessible, and I realized that now people are traveling. I mean, they themselves want to travel, and it's easy for them to travel. There's an Airbnb, there's a couch surfing. Earlier on Thorntree, I had to go and talk to each host individually to see if they will be able to host me or not. And now it's so much more easier. But the thing that I found missing was that people were kind of not realizing that there is a negative impact of travel as well. And everywhere we go, especially the fragile ecosystems that we travel to, if we are not careful, then while we may be enjoying a vacation, but the place really kind of suffers. So around 3-4 years back, I kind of started to very heavily include this aspect of responsible travel in my workshops. And now most of the work that I do is not so much about budget planning or how to plan your stay or how to plan your tickets, because that's all taken care of now. But responsible travel is what I'm doing mostly.
That's great. And, I wanted to delve a little more on solo travel and, the precautions that women have to take.
Yeah.
I mean, men may not necessarily think of many of the things. And I know from experience, because I've done a lot of solo travel, both for business and for leisure. And you have to kind of make choices when you choose accommodation, who you stay with, even couch surfing or free global freeloaders. I know I've used them in the past when I was much younger and didn't have so much of money and wanted to save as much money as I could. And it was also like this, it was a challenge for me to see maximum with the least amount of money spent without depriving myself. So there was a lot of, I think I pushed myself to see how far I could go on a shoestring budget. And that has led me to really amazing, least trodden paths in a way. So I wanted to focus on solo travel for women because, like you, I've noticed that a lot of women don't have the luxury of traveling on their own, but they also may not be allowed to by their family members. They need confidence boosting. So I'm really glad that you do these workshops to help them think through their options. And I have myself done itineraries for friends of mine, really well-established women leaders who had never traveled on their own, like budgets, day itineraries, even selecting the hotels and restaurants for them to stay and eat at. And when they came back, they said it was such a liberating experience. And I believe everyone should do it on their own. So can you share a little bit about those experiences and how, some of the successes from people who've attended those workshops of yours?
Yeah, and I'm always very I end up learning so much more from my workshops, because I get all kinds of people in the workshop. So from very young girls, young boys to ladies who are now, they can think of traveling because their kids have gone off to study and all that. So now they can think of traveling. So even like 60-year-old women and all that who come and talk about solo travel. So it's always very fulfilling. Now there's one thing. I just want to tell you about this funny incident. In fact, that workshop was happening on Women's Day, and it was a women's travel workshop. And in that whole a room full of women and girls, there were these two young boys who were sitting in the middle of the audience. So not that I minded or anything, but I had to just pull them out and say, "What are you guys doing here?" because it was a Women's Day travel workshop, so it was quite clearly for women. And they said, we came to hear how you girls actually convince your parents to let you go travel alone, because हमारे parents हमें जाने नहीं दे रहे. They are saying वो लड़का बिगड़ जाएगा, drugs करने लगेगा and all that, so they're not letting us go. So it's not always easy for men, but yeah, women have to take special precautions. And my advice to them is always, first of all, instill confidence in your parents. I mean, if you are responsible and if you can take care of yourself at home base, that's what gives their parents confidence that you can take care of yourself when you're traveling as well. So that is important. The other thing is, I mean, don't do the kind of stuff that you wouldn't probably do, even here. I mean, unfortunately, and you run an initiative for that, so unfortunately, it's not the safest for women, even in within the country, or even over here. So here I think we just get into an auto mode, and we just get into kind of a habit, and we kind of know the terrain, we know all that, so we do everything automatically, and when we go out it's a little more pronounced. But yeah, we have to stay alert. There is something called a gut feel that I think works better in women than it does in men. So even when I'm talking to the hosts where I'm going to stay, if I'm staying alone in a couch surfing, or in an Airbnb, you kind of go with that gut feel also a lot. The other thing that I do is that when I'm traveling alone, I stay in youth hostels. And in youth hostels, I'm very happy to stay in the dorms, not just because it's cheap, but also because there are other people around me. And having other people around you is not just for safety, but it also kind of connects you to the world that a hotel can never. A youth hostel is to use a very cliched statement that the hostel world uses, is really where the world meets, and you can meet the world. So so I like doing that. And yeah, I wouldn't venture out alone at night. I remember when I was in Brazil, or in some other few countries, the hosts have actually told me to not go to a certain locations, and I take that very seriously. I mean, if a local person is telling you that that place is not safe, or to leave your wallets behind when you go travel there, I take that very seriously, because if as locals they take those precautions in a few countries, then it's really important that we are cognizant of that as well.
I'm sure, but this was not your previous jobs, right? You've come into this over a period of time. Can you share a little bit about, some of your corporate roles that you have worked? You work with very big brands, and the idea is a lot of the times I highlight women. Don't have enough of role models. We don't have many reference points, and I try to amplify a lot of the successful women that I know, because one, their journey is never linear. Then it's always curved, and then you sometimes follow your heart. Like, for example, starting One Shoe Trust and trying to find your purpose as well. But it's never easy. There's always a lot of self doubt. Some of us are allowed to, and some of us are not allowed to. And whilst we try to find ourselves in this journey of life, we also want inspiration. So that's why I try to bring in people who I know who are so inspiring. So can you share a little bit about your initial corporate years and your professional journey, and what have you been doing? I mean, Nat Geo sounds great. It's a company that
Of course, absolutely. I loved my time there. The thing is that I think, like with most of us, when we start out, I mean, I know very few people who have a very clear idea of what they want to do, or where they want to be, etc., etc. And I wanted to be an engineer, and I think I wanted to be an engineer because that was the cool thing in those days when I was growing up. So I was preparing for my JE. I was a good student in school. Physics was one of my subjects. Mathematics was one of my subjects. So IT was a dream within reach. And I kind of went through the competition, and I didn't get through. And when I didn't get through, I wanted to, I just asked myself, I mean, do I want to try this again, or do I want to just continue and, see where I go? And I mean, I just continued with my graduation, and then this MBA thing was coming up. It was upcoming, nice, attractive profession, especially for girls. So I applied, and I got to an institute, and I did my master's in business. And right after that, there was a campus placement, and I got placed, and this and that, and media happened. I mean, media was not in my horizon initially, but it was. I mean, it was a job that I really did enjoy. I remember when I joined Star TV on the same day that they launched KBC. So it was an up and up from there. I mean, I really did see the television scene change totally in the country. And after that, I got a chance to work with National Geographic and launch the History Channel in India, which again was a great learning opportunity for me, because working on the entire launch of a channel along with a foreign partner was a very fulfilling experience. And I managed that brand, a brand like History Channel. It's not something that sells on its own, if you know what I mean. So I was managing that brand for a couple of years, and at that time I moved from television to digital. So this was way back in 2006, and digital was this again upcoming new media, and with promises of changing the world and everything. And I took a jump from television to digital, one of the very first few media professionals to do that. And again, I mean, the kind of upswing that I've been on ever since I joined digital is phenomenal. I mean, look at where we were in 2006 as far as digital is concerned to now. It's every day there is something new happening. So a lot of times, things might not be what you envisioned or what you planned, but I think if it's exciting, if it is challenging you, if it is making you think every day, and it is not something that you're just doing by rote, or it's repetitive, then I think it's worthwhile. And I say that for every industry, and I say that for every domain, that as long as it's making you think, as long as you are growing with what you're doing, it's worthwhile. It may not be the best, it may not be what you planned, but it challenges you. It's a learning experience.
Absolutely. And I had the same mantra when I was in aviation too. I spent 20 years in one industry, but I moved roles to such an extent. It was like as though I moved companies. Everything was so
Yeah.
different from each other. Now, when you make these decisions in your life, some of them like are risk taking. You don't know, and it's similar to the time that we are in, which is totally uncertain with COVID-19. So when you move from traditional to digital, for example, at that point, maybe a lot of people never realized how important digital was going to be. So when
Yeah.
you make such decisions, either the kind of companies you choose to work with or the kind of roles you take up, you said you go with what you believe in, right? What is your advice to young people to hone those instincts? And that also comes in when you travel, the gut instinct, like you
Yeah.
just know it's either
Yeah.
right or it's not right.
Yeah, I would say the guiding principle for me is that you can't know everything. And it's almost like saying no, having no plan is the best plan, right? I mean, you see how it unfolds, and you kind of improvise as you go. Especially when I started traveling, I mean, a 4-month backpacking trip, you can't do with much planning. You can't plan where you're going to be on which date before you step out. You have to do it on the go. You miss flights, then what do you do? Or you plan to be in a certain city on a certain date, and suddenly you realize that your accommodation is not there. Then what do you do? So basically, this is something that I grew comfortable with over time. And I say this in my workshops also, that planning on the go is something that this long term slow travel teaches you. You can't get it by doing these package tours, and you can't get it by fixing everything before you leave. That does not happen. But this comfort with your own ability, that you will be able to figure out as you go, is something that travel teaches you. It's something that I think has held me in good stead, even in my career. Of course, there are some decisions which are right, some decisions which are wrong, and in hindsight, of course, you can always figure out what was right, what was wrong. You kind of reach a museum and realize that it's shut, and you could have easily figured out earlier if it is going to be shut or not. But when you're doing everything on the go, sometimes these things happen, sometimes you do go wrong. But that's just a part of the whole journey. Nobody, I mean, I'm the last person who's all about success and all about doing things right and all about doing things perfectly. If you try to do that, you miss out on a big part of things that can happen. So my advice would be to figure out what really is your calling. Which also, I must tell you, it's never one, and you never know what is your true calling. I mean, you can continue your entire life and still not figure out what's your true calling, and that's perfectly fine. It's a constant pursuit. It's there's no end to this journey. It's a constant exploration.
Thank you for that. It's really true because as you evolve, you find different interests that are developing, and you want to live your fullest life, your best self, and therefore you take the risk. And travel
Yes.
is also about risk. And now you're innovating as well whilst during COVID-19 and we can't venture very far. So you've started a new project. Can you share a little bit about this new project
No,
of yours?
it's actually not a new project, Elsa. It's actually been going on for almost 5 years now. But it started really randomly in monsoons, and I go for my morning walks, and I've been in Bandra for such a long time now, and I mean, I don't like going to gym so much, or I like to kind of just wander around on the roads. And luckily, Bandra has these so many by lanes, nice hidden lanes. And every day in the morning, I would head out on some other new nook and cranny, and find something so beautiful, because it has all these old bungalows, it has these old Portuguese links through its places. And I suddenly started noticing them, a lot around 5 years back. And the cameras were getting better. I had my mobile phone, so I just started clicking, and I just started clicking, just started uploading pictures. And gradually what happened was that suddenly there were, like, 100 200 pictures, and people commenting and people liking, uh, and I also personally getting more and more interested in, what is this that I'm seeing every day. So I studied a lot about Bandra history. Didn't find that much, to be honest. Didn't find a book, didn't find many resources to kind of tell me more about Bandra. And that is when I started piecing together stuff along with my pictures and everything. I started piecing it together, started doing some research on the net, started talking to some people who have known the Bandra history for some time. And that's how the Bandra Neighborhood Project came together. And I realized that, you might travel all over the world and not know your own neighborhood very much. So I did an exhibition at Bagel Shop, which is again an institution in Bandra, and started these Bandra walks. So some people who came for these Bandra walks were from Bandra itself, and everyone like me was totally amazed when they saw these things. And they would pass those roads every single day, and still not know about the history of the place. So that's how the project evolved, and some of the bungalows that I photographed are actually now raised, and there are multi-story buildings in the places of those bungalows. So I'm glad, at least, I clicked them and kept with them, kept them with me. So that's the neighborhood project. And again, I mean, for traveling, it's not like you have to go very far. There's so much more to explore right where you are.
There's a saying that you travel the whole world and you find what you're looking for right here at home.
Yeah, yeah.
I think
In case,
your son or
in
daughter
my
wants to say hi.
No, they're both now hovering here around.
I really like that, because during COVID-19, people are now including their families and their children in the work space. When
Absolutely.
really it should always have been the case, it should have never been a hard separation in a way. So thank you for that. And, we're coming to the end of our show, but I wanted to ask you, what is the advice you would give your 16-year-old self?
Ah, 16-year-old self is to take even more risks, to head out even more. I think with all the guiding principles I have, there was still some time that I kind of spent in following the beaten path, and I would tell my 16-year-old to not do that.
Absolutely. We always limit ourselves, and the world is our oyster. And it's only when we look back we realize that we could have done it all. I mean, whatever we wanted to do. Of course, sometimes you don't get it,
Yeah.
You have to wait for some time. I've realized that the timing also matters. And
Yeah.
what's next for Ansoo Gupta?
There are a couple of things that I'm doing right now. Of course, with my responsible travel project, there's some stuff which is in the pipeline for myself these days. Like I said, I'm on this journey of like health and meditation and all that. So that takes a big part of my time. And again, I really don't have too many plans, and we'll see how it goes. I hope I continue to see more of this world, and I hope I continue to kind of learn more. That's about it.
Thank you, Ansoo Gupta, for joining me on Sunday Reflections and sharing your words of wisdom with
My
us.
pleasure. It's been fun.
Thank you all for joining, and do join in next Sunday as well at 5 p.m. We have Shweta Tiwari, who's the global head of knowledge and learning for Enzin, and we're going to be talking about women in the power sector and her work with farmers. So it'll be interesting. Thank you and have a wonderful evening. Join in the yoga if you can.
Elsa, apparently the world was about to end today, and